Hello, I'm Stephen Adams, and today we're going to look at a puzzle called The Spy in the Rush Coloured Trenchcoat. It's a 12-line puzzle originally by Susan Fitch. I want to thank Nick Corkegan for making me aware of this puzzle. Let's dive in. The puzzle reads, 4 spies in trench coats sat in 4 facing seats as they traveled the Peking Express. With 2 by the window and 2 by the aisle, the arrangement was strange, as you guessed. The English spy sat on Mr. B's left. Mr. A had a coat colored tan. The spy dressed in olive was on the German spy's right. Mr. C was a cigar-smoking man. Mr. D was across from the American spy. The Russian in khaki had a scarf around his throat. The English spy stared out the window to his left. So who was the spy in the rust-colored coat? Alright, so how are we going to go about figuring out this puzzle? Well, the first thing that I notice is that most of the lines in this puzzle make some relationship to the physical arrangement of the riders. If we want to keep track of it all, it might be helpful to create a model of this situation, and that's what I've done with this picture here. I pulled out the relevant details from the different clues. For example, all the names and the nationalities are there, so we've pulled those out and put them in, as well as all the different colors of the coats that are sitting here in our puzzle. Now, to understand the layout, we have to first of all realize that these people are sitting on a train, which is indicated by the Peking Express. And this arrangement of 4 facing seats. Again, if you're familiar with train travel, or if you think about it or research just a little tiny bit, you can see that we get 2 seats facing 2 other seats, with 2 on the outside edge at the aisle and 2 on the inside edge at the window. If you've seen a Harry Potter movie or if you've been on the GO train lately, this is not a new situation for you. Okay, so with this basic model set up, we can start going through the puzzle's lyrics and see what we can come up with in terms of solving this thing. At this point, you should go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and give this a try for yourself. See how far you can get, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. We look at the poem that we're given and we see that the first 4 lines really only tell us about the physical layout of where these people are sitting. It doesn't give us any clues about the nationalities or the coats or anything like that, so we're down to only 8 lines of useful poem to try to figure out this puzzle. Line number 5 says, the English spy sat on Mr. B's left. And the only direct implication there is that the English spy is not Mr. B. That would be great, except we don't know where the English spy is, so we can't cross a name off of his box. And we don't know where Mr. B is, so we can't cross a nationality off in his box. We're going to have to sit tight on that piece of information for a few minutes and come back to it. Let's see what we can do with this idea of on the left. So, the English spy is sitting on Mr. B's left. Given the arrangement that we have here, in order for Mr. B to have somebody on his left, if he's on the top, then he would have to be next to the window. So the English spy would have to be in the top right-hand spot. On the other hand, if Mr. B is seated on the bottom, then in order for somebody to be on his left, he would have to be on the aisle side, and the English spy would have to be next to the window on the bottom. Otherwise, there is no seat on his left. If he's next to that window, the English spy would have to be outside running beside the train. So, we can take that information, and it at least eliminates a couple of possibilities of where Mr. B or the English spy could possibly be seated. We don't have a final answer. We don't know for sure which of these options is the right one, but we found out that Either way we make our assumptions, two of these spots were ruled out. So let's go ahead and update our table, and that will take us on to the next clue. You might be yelling at your screen right now going, wait a second. You've assumed that the window is on that side and the aisle is on that side. What if it's the other way around? If you are, fantastic, then you're really catching on to this idea of identifying and challenging your assumptions. But guess what? This puzzle has a neat little property to it. If I reverse our picture, then we end up with the exact same relationships ruled out. Okay? This puzzle happens to have a feature that we call symmetry. Specifically rotational symmetry. When I rotate the picture around so that it's the other way, nothing changes. Okay? Not every puzzle has that property. Here we do. If we didn't, then what I'd probably have to do is keep track of both situations. If the window's on that side, if the window's on that side, I'd end up with 8 boxes that I was trying to rule out 4 of them. So it would be a more difficult puzzle, but thankfully we do have symmetry here and we can eliminate a lot of choices right off the bat. Okay, let's get back on track. On line 6 we see Mr. A has a tan colored coat. And again, because we don't know where Mr. A is, we can't do anything with that. Now we've heard about Mr. B, but we don't know where he is either, so we can't really even eliminate tan for him. We'll come back around to it. This is a common technique. There's some information, I can't really put it to use right now, but I will circle back around to it later when I can make more use of it. The facts on line 7 say, the spy dressed in olive was on the German spy's right. Okay, so we're going to use analogy. We saw how to handle somebody being on the left. Now we're just doing it for on the right. It's a slightly different, specific situation, but the technique is exactly the same. We're going to reason it all out. If you assume that the German spy is sitting next to the window, then we can infer that the person wearing the olive coat is on the bottom right. There's no seat on the other side. If we assume the German spy is next to the aisle, then we can infer that the person wearing the olive coat is seated in the top left. Now, those are the only 2 choices of where the German spy can be seated. He's either next to a window or next to an aisle. So, although it doesn't tell us everything, it does help us eliminate more possibilities. Okay? We also know that the German isn't wearing the olive coat, but we don't know exactly where. So, we'll just go ahead and update where the German cannot be sitting and where the olive coat wearer cannot be sitting. The next fact we're given says Mr. C was the only cigar smoking man. Now, if we knew some clever rule about where cigar smokers were supposed to sit on trains, that might help us out. As far as I know, they're supposed to sit outside because who wants to smell stinky cigar smoke? There's nothing here that we can use in our puzzle because it doesn't tell us where an ashtray is or anything else that would actually clue us into how to use that fact. So this is one of those situations where we're going to decide to ignore a fact that we're given. It's surplus, it's not helpful. Line number 9 says Mr. D was across from the American spy. We don't know where Mr. D is, and we don't know where the American is. So, not much we can get out of this one right now. The relationship of being across from would only tell us that we could rule out 2 positions if we knew where one of those 2 people was. Of course, we also see the American spy is not Mr. D, but for all the reasons we've already mentioned, we can't use it. Line 10 tells us the Russian spy is wearing a khaki coat and is wearing a scarf. The scarf bit is one of those fluffy details that we can just get rid of because nobody else is mentioned wearing anything special, and I don't think there's a designated scarf wearer seat. where are we going to put it? Well, we can't really put it anywhere just yet, but it looks like it's going to be something we'll get some mileage out of in a few minutes. Now, line 11 tells us the English spy stared out the window at his left. Now, there's only one seat in this train compartment where the window is on his left. The person has to be seated on the bottom, and then the aisle is on their right. So, we can definitely place the English spy in the bottom left seat. Because that also implies he isn't sitting anywhere else, we rule him out of all the other spots, and we also eliminate the German, American, and Russian from sitting in his seat. Nobody's sitting on anybody's lap, nobody's got their feet on another chair. One person per chair. Now, is that another assumption? Of course it is. But some of these assumptions creep in because they're just perfectly reasonable. If we could not solve this puzzle, then we would have to really look at those things and start trying to ask ourselves, what's going on? What did we miss? Okay. So, we update our table, and when we look at this seating arrangement carefully, we can see that there's only one place left where the German spy could be seated, and that's in the top right. The process of elimination has given us that piece of information. Okay? We eliminate the German from all the other seating locations. We eliminate the American and the Russian from the position where the German is seated. And now we're ready to make use of some of those previous clues that we had. If the German is seated in the top right, then the olive coat wearer is in the top left. Update your table. Now we get the implication that neither the English spy nor the German one are the ones wearing the khaki coat because it's worn by the Russian. So knowing where the German and the English are, we can eliminate the khaki coat from them. And now we can deduce from our model that only the person in the bottom right seat could be wearing the khaki coat. So we know now that that is the Russian spy. We eliminate the Russian spy from all the other locations, and by process of elimination, the American spy must be in the top left. If we go back to line number 5, where you see a clue about Mr. B, we can figure out that Mr. B is in the bottom right because the English spy is on his left. Eliminating him from all the other locations. And from line number 9, we look at the position of the American spy, and across from him is Mr. D. So the English spy is now Mr. D. Once these things start going, you usually get a fair amount of mileage out of every clue. Now, we get the clue that will let us eliminate that the American spy is not Mr. A. Line 6 says Mr. A has a tan coat. We know the American spy is wearing an olive coat. The process of elimination tells us Mr. C is the American spy. That only leaves Mr. A to be the German spy. And of course, he has his tan coat. When we update our table, through all of this, we arrive at the final deduction that we can make, and that is that the spy with the rust-colored coat is the English spy, Mr. D. It's not a very James Bond outfit, but there it is. Now, going through this and looking at the original 12-line puzzle, there's no real hint that we should arrive at a correct answer or how to proceed about it. This is all about logic and reasoning, as we've said. Documenting every step as we go so that you can sort of unwind if you make a mistake is something that would be pretty tedious. As you can tell, even just verbally going through the puzzle, there's a fair bit of thinking going on that you could do faster just with a pencil and scratching things out. But for those of you who are wondering or interested, there is a whole field around this called predicate calculus. That is how computer logical proving systems are built up. You can state these things and have the computer grind out some of these answers for you. Okay, are you ready to tackle some puzzles on your own? Give your brain a workout, share your favorites, and if you get stuck, please reach out for help. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I'm Stephen Adams, and I hope that you are having a great day. Bye for now.